welcome back to the vlog channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's not at all a vlog of my day. I thought it just made more sense to kind of isolate this topic into one video. It is probably my #1 asked question in my DMs, on Twitter, on my public phone number, and obviously as just one human, I cannot respond to all of them. So I wanted to address and talk about and kind of just like walk through the overarching theme of my anxious life. I also am wearing the best sweater today. It's from a small business that I love and will link in the description box. Look how cute this is. Emotional, and that's okay. It's so cute. Oh my God, I die. Jeremy literally today was like, are you emotional today? And I was like, yeah, bitch, but it's okay. So anyways, if you are watching this video, you are probably someone who has experienced anxiety or have a loved one that has anxiety, or you just want to learn more so that you can be properly equipped if you ever encounter a fellow anxious person. And I have found ways to incorporate humor into this disorder, and by no means do I want that to retract from how serious this is. So I want to be very clear, like my anxiety disorder has total control of my life. It manifests in almost everything I do. It controls where I can and cannot go. It controls what I think I can and cannot do, whether my body could like actually physically be there. My mind mentally makes me not be able to go there. So because it's something I've dealt with for so many years, I do make jokes about it. I find humor in it because anxiety and this journey, it's a part of me and I've accepted it. And I don't always have such a positive sentiment towards having an anxiety disorder, but I feel like when I'm able to have a positive perspective on all of it, it makes it so much easier to deal with. Also, right off the top, I want to make a disclaimer that I am in no way a professional. I have no professional training or education. I am not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I am just a fellow anxious person who has had an anxiety disorder for over 9 years now, diagnosed 9 years. And over that time, I've just learned a lot, I've experienced a lot, and I've done a ton of research. And I think above all of that, I just hope that I can be another voice in the mental health space to normalize these conversations. I've made a bunch of notes so I don't forget anything. I asked you on Instagram, I had a little like agenda built out for what I want to talk about in today's video, and then if I was missing anything. So I got a ton of great feedback from all of you. How do you know if you have an anxiety disorder? What does a panic attack feel like? Difference between having anxiety and a panic attack, being nervous versus anxiety, therapy and the different type of therapies that I've tried, medications and doctors, again, what I've tried and what to do during an anxiety attack. And then I also am gonna leave a bunch of resources in the description box from different websites where I get my information, and also places that you can reach out to for help. And to double down on the fact that I am not a doctor, this video is not intended to diagnose you with any kind of disorder. This video is not telling you what medication is best for you. There is no one size fits all fix for anxiety, because bitch, if there was, you know I would be first in line. But it's something that is hard, it takes time, it's trial and error, it's talking to friends and loved ones and professionals, and being kind to yourself, listening to your body, listening to your mind, and prioritizing your mental health. Also, before we jump into this, I like meant to include this somewhere in like this little intro portion, but I googled this stat just to like, because I was curious, and there are in the US alone over 40 million people who have some kind of anxiety disorder, which is really crazy. And I think again just really solidifies the fact that you are not alone. I am not alone. We are not alone. And not that knowing that makes your physical or mental symptoms any easier to deal with. It is comforting on some level that there is a massive community of people who can use resources, hopefully like this video, to connect with each other. Okay, so first up on our agenda, how do you know if you have an anxiety disorder? I cannot diagnose you, but what I can tell you are the symptoms of anxiety. I have experienced everything from something as, you know, chill as sweaty palms, which is, you know, maybe not entirely chill, because like no one loves a sweaty palm. It's not a cute feeling. And then all the way to my spine going numb. I literally took myself to the emergency room because I was so freaked out by this new sensation that I never had before, that I definitely was like, this is a pretty intense body part that is definitely not supposed to be numb, and I straight up took my ass to the ER. And having one or more of the big list of symptoms that anxiety comes with does not mean you have a disorder. It is very normal and very natural to have, you know, a few of these symptoms in stressful situations. Like, that is just your body's natural response. If you're hearing this list and checking a few things off, that absolutely does not mean that you have an anxiety disorder. The symptoms of anxiety are like the side effects pamphlet of birth control. Like, that shit is just a long ass list of things that are very real and normal and natural, and things that can occur when you're feeling anxious. So I'm just gonna straight up read from this list because bitch, this is a lot. Okay, so nervousness, restlessness, or being tense. For me, I hold my tension all in my shoulders and my jaw, and like I'll be halfway through the day and be like, oh my god, I have been clenching my jaw for 4 hours and my shoulders are at my ears and I'm sitting at the computer like this. So for this one, my biggest piece of advice is to just like check in with yourself and be like, are my shoulders at my ears? Yes? Okay, let's put them down and just take a few breaths, roll your shoulders back. If I were to have a candid photo taken of me, this is what it would look like during the day. Feelings of danger, panic, or dread. I've seen a few like little infographics or whatever on Instagram where it compares having anxiety to living regular life, but feeling like you've got the suspenseful movie music kind of like creeping up behind you, or just like playing while you live your life, like right when the monster is about to attack, or like the Jaws theme song before Jaws like comes and attacks or whatever. It feels like that level of like anticipatory anxiety music playing over your life, and you're just on edge. You're on edge because it's a lot. It's a lot. Rapid heart rate, rapid breathing, or hyperventilation, increased or heavy sweating, trembling, or muscle twitching. One that's not on here that I experience is like muscle stiffness. Like when I have an anxiety attack at 3 in the morning and take my ass downstairs, my limbs are so stiff for some reason. So that's not on here, but personally, I'm gonna add it on here. Weakness or fatigue, difficulty focusing or thinking clearly about anything other than the thing you're worried about. That is one that I struggle with so hard. Digestive or gastrointestinal problems, a strong desire to avoid things that trigger your anxiety. I am so bad for that. Like when I don't wanna do something because I know it's gonna make me anxious, I find every excuse in the book to not do the thing that I know is gonna trigger anxiety. Obsessions about certain ideas, a sign of OCD, performing certain behaviors over and over again, anxiety surrounding a particular life event or experience that has occurred in the past, especially indicative of post-traumatic stress disorder. If you've watched any of my other anxiety related videos, this is a lot of content that I've kind of already covered, so I can leave links to the other anxiety videos that I've done in the past. Symptoms of anxiety have such a hold on my life. It controls so much of what I do that can be accompanied by other feelings like depression and just overall frustration. Panic attacks are obviously a massive part of my life, but anxiety symptoms are something that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And actually, you know what? Panic attacks have been a little more present than I would like them to be, but the goal is to eliminate panic attacks and reduce the day-to-day anxiety, which is what I'm sure a lot of us are all working towards. Okay, so what does a panic attack feel like? I feel like this is one of the most common questions that I get is like, oh, I had all these symptoms, like did I have a panic attack? So a panic attack is much different than just feeling symptoms of anxiety. It is like an overwhelmingly powerful sensation. It can come on suddenly, just like out of nowhere. It can be triggered by irrational fears or phobias, and it basically just like takes over your body and brain. Personally, when I'm having a panic attack, a lot of my triggers are around getting sick, so emetophobia, which I've talked about in the past, and it's essentially just like the feeling of being out of control in the form of like throwing up or feeling nauseous, which is really fun because like one of the main common symptoms of a panic attack is nausea. So it's a really fun cycle that I put myself through. My panic attacks usually start with nausea, trouble concentrating. Like I very much have like tunnel vision where the only thing that my body and mind is focusing on is how I feel. It's racing heart. Like I mentioned, sometimes I have parts of my body go numb, which is the one side effect that I'm like, is this okay? It is crazy how powerful your brain can be in terms of like manifesting symptoms. Sometimes my teeth will chatter, and then afterwards it almost always leads to like IBS issues and just like gastrointestinal problems. Oh, and like one of the biggest feelings for me personally is the fight or flight sensation, and usually it's flight. There's not many times where I feel like my body is like, yeah, I'm gonna fight this, it's gonna be good, I'm gonna win. Usually my body is like, get the fuck out, you're going to die. And that's usually like the overwhelming sensation of what a panic attack feels like. Essentially, it is an overwhelming sensation of fear that comes with super intense physical and mental sensations, sensations and side effects. And a super common question that I still sometimes get confused is what the difference is between anxiety and a panic attack. I'm someone who struggles with anticipatory anxiety like so much. So for example, just say I have a trip coming up. Not that I've been on a flight in literally 14, 15, 16, 15 months, but just say I had a flight coming up. I would like slightly paralyze myself for like the 3 days leading up to that flight because I have anticipatory anxiety, starting to get anxious and thinking about the possibilities and the future and what could go wrong and what if I feel sick on the day of my flight. So I start having these like obsessive thoughts about future situations. Symptoms of anxiety can also come on a little more gradually. Like I think a panic attack is like you're either okay or a little anxious and you're like, no, you're like, bitch, I'm having a panic attack. Whereas with anxiousness, I feel like it grows gradually as like just say your event or your flight becomes closer. And for me personally, like in this flight metaphor, sometimes I will wake up totally fine day of the flight, it'll be totally smooth, it'll be great, or I might go the other direction and my anxiety will continue to gradually grow and I will end up having a panic attack. So it definitely is a scale, and sometimes you end up tipping the scale and heading over into panic attack territory. Another thing that's important to understand is that nervousness is different than anxiety. Nerves are something that are so natural. It's the body's natural response to something that's going to be in the future. Like if you have a big sports game or you are the lead in a play or you have a big speech you have to give, it's temporary and it's directly linked to a specific event or future moment. There's a little more science behind this as well that I want to make sure that I get right. So nervousness is a hormonal and physiological response. Your blood pressure can rise, your heart beats faster, you get the funneled sweaty palms. It's your body's natural response. Whereas with anxiety, it's a psychiatric disorder that develops from a number of complex factors like genetics, brain chemistry, and different life events or trauma. Okay, let's talk therapy. Therapy is something that I think is so important in the process of managing, coping, and also getting better. I genuinely believe that every single person comes out of therapy a little bit smarter and a little bit better, or a little more armed with tools for your anxiety toolkit. I'm someone who has never struggled to open up to therapists, which is typically a stranger when you first meet them. I know a lot of people are uncomfortable thinking about like sharing your deepest, darkest traumas with someone that you've met 6 seconds ago, and you're also like stuck in a stuffy room with them for 45 minutes. Like I totally get that that is not the most ideal environment to recap everything that's happened to you over like the last however many years of your life. I totally get that. But I also just want to remind you that to get the most out of therapy, they can only work with the information that you give them. Everything that you tell your therapist is confidential. It does not leave that room. So I started working with a new psychiatrist first, and within his paperwork, you had to just like write an essay about all the things that have happened in your life, medications you've tried, medications that didn't work, different types of therapy you've been to, what your family life is like, how your childhood was, any trauma that's happened. So like this shit was an essay. It was a 7-page essay. And because I technically own that paperwork, because it's my words, I ended up giving this essay to the next therapist that I worked with as well. And it can just help to expedite the process of like verbally having to recap so many moments of your life that's like very difficult to squeeze into like an introductory session. And I also found that it was like very therapeutic to write down everything that like I've tried, that I've done, that's happened to me. I think I actually made like some new connections thinking about how all of these elements were like intertwined with each other. My most effective combination is therapy and medication in tandem. That's personally what I've found has just worked the best for me, and I've tried a handful of different types of therapy, some being really successful and some being not so successful. But again, it is not a one size fits all, and there are so many different types of therapy for you to try, which at first can seem a little intimidating, but I think you can also look at it with the perspective that there are so many different options of research ways to heal and get better and work through whatever you're going through. I have tried EMDR, which I'm gonna mess this up, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's supposed to reduce the intensity of disturbing thoughts. For me personally, I gave it like a solid 2 to 3 months to try this one out, and it just wasn't for me. I've also tried hypnotherapy, which actually made me freak out a lot. My body responded very poorly to going into a hypnosis state. I think because my anxiety revolves so much around losing control, I was scared to give my brain to the hypnosis state, the hypnotic state. I don't know. Anyways, personally, again, was not for me, but I've had multiple friends who have found so much success in hypnotherapy. And then I think one of the most common forms of therapy, and personally what I'm doing right now and has been the most successful for me currently, CBT, which stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. I'm sure you've noticed at this point that control is a major point of my anxiety. And so with CBT, I find that the different techniques and like action items that I'm doing to work towards improving, it makes me feel like I'm in control. And the overall goal with CBT is to change the way that you think and your behavioral patterns. So those are just the 3 forms of therapy that I've tried personally and can speak to, but there's also exposure therapy and the list goes on. I highly recommend looking into the different types of therapy if you're looking to explore going the route of going to therapy, because you have so many options and can definitely find something that fits your learning style and also what you think is gonna make you feel the most comfortable. Okay, medication. Medication is not for everyone. I know the idea of getting on medication is very daunting. I feel like a question that I get asked a lot by friends is that they're scared that an anxiety medication will change their personality or make them less fun, make them less funny, and just like put a damper on who they are as a person. I use the metaphor, if I am my own personality, my own being, and my anxiety is like this big, dark, gray, scary cloud that's got the Jaws music and the scary horror movie music happening. It's raining on me, it's hailing on me, it's throwing snowballs at me. Like this bitch is just like above my head and it follows me around in everything that I do. At the very beginning of my journey with medication, the meds helped to part and clear this cloud. Therapy definitely played a big part in that as well, but medication for me just helped clear that big ass cloud that was following me around. And honestly, the cloud was really the thing that was putting a damper on my life and my personality and just like sucking my soul. So eventually when that was able to clear, I was able to just like regain life and live so much fuller. So I think in my experience, it was actually the very opposite of putting a damper on my personality. I got my life back. The best place to start is with your family doctor. They can assess, you know, how you're feeling and give you some options. I was on the same medication for 8 years that just started with my primary caregiver, and that medication worked for me for 8 years. Over the course of those 8 years, I upped my dose a handful of times, and when I hit the max dosage of that medication, that's when my doctor encouraged me to meet with a psychiatrist who is a doctor that specializes in mental health, and they were able to refer me to this test that you just do at home. The one that I did was called Genomind. So through this test, they're essentially measuring and checking to see if you have any kind of genetic mutation happening up in your brain. So essentially, I had 2 channels in my brain that were much more open than they were supposed to be. So the overactivity of like different brain shit firing off in all directions at all times. I had mentioned to my psychiatrist that it feels like my brain is always going like 1,000 miles per hour. So that definitely 100% correlated with the mutation that we uncovered through this test. So this test can give you an idea of what kind of medication might be best suited towards the genetic makeup of your brain, because typically you just go through trial and error, which I have also done. But a major factor for why my doctor wanted me to do this test was that I was at such a high dosage of my original medication that there were going to be, and then there were, some crazy side effects coming off of it. So to try to minimize how bad that process ended up being, she just wanted to set me up for the most success that I could possibly have transitioning over to a new medication. And by no means do I think that everyone needs to take this test. I had just been on the same medication for 8 years, was at this crazy high dose, wanted to try something else. I know that there are a ton and probably majority of people who are able to find their right meds combination after like 1 or 2 rounds of trial and error. I personally do not have the greatest health insurance in terms of mental health. And so this was a test that I obviously am so lucky and so grateful that I have the luxury of being able to afford. So the test is just something to be aware about, to know about, but I really want to stress that this is not something that you have to do. And it's not a test that like spits out exactly what medication is going to be right for you. Like even having my results from this test, like there are still so many options of medications, and my psychiatrist and I just like worked through to see what the best fit was. So it's not something that's going to cut corners and make it easier. There's just never an immediate and direct and 100% accurate answer, but this has just been something that's been a part of my anxiety journey, and I get a lot of questions about it. So I started on an SSRI, which is the most common antidepressant that is also used to help treat anxiety. That's the medication that I was on for 8 years. It was called Celexa. I was at the top of the dosage of the milligrams that I was able to take. I switched over to another version of an SSRI, which is called Zoloft. Tried Zoloft for a decent amount of, I think it might have been 6 months. Like I really gave it a college try, and that's when my doctor suggested that, you know, an SSRI probably isn't for me and there's so many other options. We did the test. My next approach was a little more unconventional. So essentially we used anti-seizure medications to help lower the overall overactivity that was happening in my brain, and then also a blood pressure medicine to help bring my heart rate down, because I feel like I'm someone who's just continuously having like heart palpitations. Fast forward, another medication change, and I actually stayed on the blood pressure medication because I do feel like that's having a positive effect on me. But essentially the plan that we tried for 4 months with like lowering the overactivity, found that it wasn't for me. Had my worst 4 months that I've ever had in my entire anxiety journey. You've probably seen me crying on social media. The last 4 months for me have been really rough, which brings me to my next medication, which is an SNRI. And I forgot to mention that an SSRI affects the serotonin in our brains, and SNRI affects the serotonin and also the norepinephrine, which is directly correlated with the fight or flight sensation that I personally am like in a constant state of. So fingers crossed, it's only been day 2, but the good news is that I haven't had any side effects so far. So I'm feeling positive about it so far, but obviously most medications take like minimum 4 weeks to really start seeing a difference. So updates to come on that. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of medication options. There's also a tricyclic, not entirely sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but affects the serotonin, the norepinephrine, and then a third brain chemical that can help contribute to balancing out depression and anxiety. I feel like another round of tests that are sometimes overlooked are just like the regular tests that you get done when you go for your yearly physical with your doctor. Looking at your blood work and your hormone levels can uncover just like vitamin deficiencies that can sometimes be contributing to your mental health, but are so easy to fix with supplements and vitamins. I had no idea that we had copper in our bodies. Like iron you heard of, and zinc, you know, you've heard of that, but like my iron to copper ratio was all out of whack. So I just started taking vitamins and supplements to help balance out my metals in my body. The goal for me is to find balance within my body, so simple tests like these are really great places to start. Okay, so what to do during a panic attack? This is a question that's so easy for me to answer, but it can just be so difficult to take the advice that you're giving. So like when I'm having a panic attack, like I have my go-to techniques for coping. I've got my little toolkit of things that I go through, my routine of like trying to get through it. But even when you have the most tools, it does not take away from the fact that like having a panic attack fucking sucks. Like it just feels like the ultimate betrayal of your body and your brain. Just like everything is clashing, no one's getting along, and this is the result. The feeling of just like doom and fear and just like never being able to come out of it is so scary, and it doesn't get less scary. Scary is not really the word. I mean, like they're scary as fuck, like don't get me wrong, they're scary as fuck, but I do feel like the more tools you have, the less scary they are, it doesn't take away from how shitty they feel. I mean, they're still scary. They're really still scary. You know what? I'm going back and forth on this. I can't decide. There is something more manageable when you have more tools in your toolkit to fight back. I'm having trouble articulating that your first panic attack is just as serious as your most recent panic attack. So anyways, while my brain works that out, let's go through some easy techniques that are doable no matter where you are, no matter who you are, and no matter who you're with. The first one is to breathe. If you are anything like I'm someone who can easily go into the hyperventilation state, I always think of the Pig in Chicken Little who has the brown paper bag who's like that is me in my worst state of panic attack. And one of the most immediate and first things you should do is focus on your breath. There are so many incredible apps for breath work where you've got like a little blob that expands and grows as you breathe in, you hold it, and you release. The exercise that I always go to, especially when I'm dealing with like a majorly racing heart, is you breathe in for 5 seconds, you hold for 5 seconds, you breathe out for 5 seconds, and you repeat that process. And I think scientifically it like has to slow your heart rate down. Not entirely sure why. Someone told me that once. And I think even just thinking that, even if it's just placebo, helps me recenter myself. You need to be getting oxygen to your brain. Next, we've got physical techniques. And I've tried a few of these. They're kind of hit or miss for me, but the science behind it is really encouraging, and I definitely encourage you to try this. My newest technique is sour candy. It's so crazy, but when you shock one of your senses, it pulls your focus completely away from your panic attack or even just a feeling of anxiousness, and it completely redirects your focus to how sour your Warhead or your Sour Patch Kids, depending on how sensitive your palate is towards sour candy. So like a Sour Patch Kid to me is like nothing because I love candy. So I have to go all the way towards a Warhead. Oh my God, even just like saying Warhead, I can feel my throat doing that thing like before you eat a sour candy. And it is crazy how fast your brain has to redirect over to the new physical sensation. Also proven research that just like cold water can help shock your system a little bit to redirect your focus to the sensation of cold water and physical touch. I personally haven't tried this because I know how much my body would hate this, but my therapist said that like if you hop in the shower in freezing ice cold water, your panic attack will end. And he said that's all facts. I have not tried it, but if anyone has, please let me know in the comments. And then we have mental techniques, and this is the strongest one for me personally. This is my absolute go-to, and I've tried like all the techniques that we've talked about. I'm about to get into like the 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding stuff. Like I've tried all of it, and for me personally, the mental techniques are the strongest by far to redirect my intention, because that's the goal. Like if my panic attack is over here, I need to recenter myself. I need to redirect that hyper focus on my anxiety back into like my own reality. Numbers are something that are super mental that you can use to again center yourself. So counting backwards from 100 or counting backwards in increments of 7, doing random like times table multiplication. Putting your brain to work is such a great way to redirect your attention. There are also so many amazing just like phone app games that require so much attention. So I will leave the name of the one that I personally go to every time I'm anxious. It was called Match 3D. This is not sponsored. This is a game that even if I'm not having a panic attack, requires so much focus and brain energy. Essentially, it's a timed matching game. So I'm up against the clock. I'm trying to find matches. You have to drag them down to this little spot. It just requires so much brain power that I couldn't possibly focus on a panic attack and doing a good job at this game. Grounding techniques are something that I personally have struggled with, but I know that they work wonders for so many people, so I definitely want to talk about them. Grounding techniques are paired with your 5 senses. So it's 5 things you can hear, 4 things you can see, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. There are other grounding methods like finding everything blue, and essentially the goal is to bring you back into the present. And again, you're using brain power to name these things with your senses to find the blue objects, and it pulls the brain power away from the panic attack and like all the crazy shit that's going on over here with your brain, and pulls it back into the center so you can refocus yourself. And the last one is soothing techniques. And for me personally, I think these are the best for like daily maintenance of your mental health. So it's simple things like meditation. And again, there are so many free meditation apps or free meditation videos just on YouTube. Sitting with your pet. You guys know that Moose is a massive source of happiness and comfort for me. And another one that I really like, especially when my anxiety is paired with depression, is just making a list of everything that I am grateful for, a list of everything that I'm happy about, a list of everything that I'm looking forward to. I love the soothing techniques because they are just like so centered around mindfulness and self-love. And I think even if you don't have anxiety, those are some great techniques to practice. I know that was all a lot to take in. I have no idea how long this video is going to be, but I wanted to be as thorough as possible. And I don't know if I've done a video this in depth about kind of the main elements, the pillars of anxiety that I feel like I have educated myself the most on. And this is just my experience, and I want to normalize the conversations around mental health as much as possible. If I struggled with all of this just like in the dark and offline, if you looked at my TikTok and my Instagram and my main channel YouTube videos, it would look like I am a highly functioning, thriving human being. And obviously in like a lot of areas I am thriving and I'm high functioning, but my anxiety controls all of my life. It is the center of everything that I do right now. I am so aware of it and I've accepted it, but it is such a massive part of my life that it's never something that I would want to hide, because you are not alone in this. I am right here with you. I'm right here with you. And I want to make sure that people know that having an anxiety disorder is hard work. It is daily work. It is having good days and bad days. And that is the reality for my foreseeable future. Again, I've accepted that and I'm okay with that. There are so many resources that are completely free. Some of the most memorable and helpful pieces of information and techniques that I've learned are straight up off YouTube or forums or online articles. There are also free crisis lines, which I will link in the description box below. My point being is that getting help for mental health is attainable for literally anyone. Anxiety is scary, it's a lot, there can be a lot of unknown factors, but hopefully by watching this video, you learn something that helps you feel like you can take your control back. Again, I know that this was a lot to take in. I will leave resources like crazy down below. Thank you so much if you've made it this far into the video. This is something that I am so passionate about and that I live and breathe on a daily basis. So hopefully this video was helpful and I will see you guys soon.